This month we're going over shutter speed and synchronization with your flash. So we're going to be picking and choosing through the menu on the DVD. And we're going to go into proper exposure because that's going to be where we find this little guy, which is the shutter speed. Now what your shutter is, I've always thought it should be called the opener because what it does is it opens up to reveal light to the image sensor that's behind there, or film. Back in the day it was film behind the shutter. But what it does is it opens up and then closes the shutter. So it's going to open and then close, and then it's going to reset for the next picture. And basically what it is that's what your shutter is. So they're called curtains. So there's two curtains. There's your front curtain and your rear curtain. So your front one goes first and your rear one goes last. At certain speeds of shooting, the whole viewing plane back here, the whole film plane or digital reader frame is going to be revealed. And up to a certain point, that's what happens. So that's going to be really important when it comes time to talk about flash. So right now it doesn't really seem to matter too much, but it's very important in flash photography that you know that at a certain speed, boom, the camera's open, the whole film plane behind it is there, and then this one closes. And that's normally at 200 or 250th of a second on most cameras. Now, when you go faster than that, let's say you go 1,000th of a second, what happens is this one, the first one starts moving, and the second one starts moving almost immediately. And it crosses. So it opens, goes by, and then closes. So at very high speeds, that's an extreme where it just opens and then goes cross, just like that. And that's for fast speeds. For slower speeds, it's going to open, stay open, stay open, stay open, and then it's going to close. So that's your shutter. And the longer it stays open, the more light it lets into to touch the sensor. All right, now from the main menu, we're going to choose our flash, and then in the flash menu, we're going to choose this right here, synchronization. A very important thing to keep in mind with flash is your synchronization speed with your camera. So it's going to be called sync speed. What it is basically is your camera has a point where when the shutter opens, the complete frame is showed behind it. The complete film or sensor meter, the complete film or your digital sensor is exposed at one time. So the whole thing. It's normally a 200th of a second or 250th of a second or slower. Any more than that, a 500th of a second, when it's halfway through, the other one starts closing and your reader is never fully exposed. That's very important when it comes to flash because your flash goes on and off in a very, very, very short amount of time, okay? It's there and gone in no time. So that's all the time it needs to light up a frame. But if your shutter is open all the way, great. So that's your sync speed. You need to be at 200 or 250th or slower. And in your camera, it'll tell you what your sync speed is. The front curtain and the rear curtain need to both be open all at the same time. At any higher speeds than your sync speed, they're going to be passing in a manner like this, and your picture is not going to be exposed correctly. It's going to have one strip of proper exposure, and then it's going to be unexposed in the other areas because your flash isn't going to hit it. So that's very important to keep in mind when using flash. It's one of the main basic things to using flash. When I first started, I lost some beautiful pictures. I thought I got them, and I thought I had them until, this is back in film days, I developed my film, and I just had these little strips of these beautiful women doing beautiful things. But, what you gonna do? You're only in Cancun once, Oh. But, well, me, I was only in Cancun once. But, you get your sync speed right, you won't miss out on great images, and, just make sure that, that's something to keep in mind. It's very simple, but it's key. It's definitely important. So don't forget that, and your flash, your flash career will be fantastic. There's a lot more to the flash chapter than we've gone over. We're just going to show you one more piece before we close this month's episode out. So stay tuned and enjoy. Your camera, your in-camera flash, you can change different settings on it. I would check in your manual to find what settings you can and can't change. But there's going to be things like exposure compensation, and the flash puts out these pulses which are very annoying and very crappy, and so I like to turn off that little pulsing system for the red eye removal and for the autofocus and stuff like that. I turn that off just because it sucks. It sucks to be a person and you think the picture got taken, and then you start talking and then the picture fires. So one thing you can do is turn that off for the sake of everybody. a lot of cameras nowadays come with a in-camera flash, and that's all fine and dandy, but I prefer something like this. It gives you a little bit more power. This is my Canon 550EX. I know it's not the 580EX, but I got it a while ago. But anyhow, it works. It works great. It's got its own little metering system, so it's going to meter the light and put out the correct amount of light that it feels is the correct exposure, and it's going to from here, it goes, boop, it reads it, it does its thing, and then it's going to fire the correct amount of light that it believes it's the correct amount of light. And it's normally pretty good. So I use the automatic mode on it. For the most part, there are times when I'll use the manual mode, manually setting your flash to fire at full power, half power, quarter power, eighth power, and then you can gauge when you need to use those and whatnot. For the most part, the metering for the flash is pretty good. So I use that. Like I said, in this flash, it's got its metering mode. It also helps focus. It sends out a little infrared grid, so if something doesn't have the right thing to focus on, it does that. But also, it's got its manual mode where you put out the right amount of power and tells you at what distance it's going to be. The great thing about these flashes is basically, I always say they talk to the camera. So they talk to each other, and the camera settings will appear on the back here, and it'll say what lens you have and what aperture you're at. It'll know your camera shutter speed, your ISO, and then it puts out the correct amount of light after it reads the distance with its its meter here. So it's going to meter it, and it's going to put out the perfect amount of light for it. It's pretty good. I found myself using the manual mode a lot more lately once I got more confident with it. So you just throw on exactly the power of light that you want to be, whether it's 100%, 50%, and so on, and the distance that it's going to be good. So if you can keep yourself at that distance, all your pictures are going to be shot correctly. So it has the same shortcomings in its metering mode, such as when there's too much white in a picture or too much dark in a picture, it will falter in those situations. So if you're taking pictures at, let's say, a wedding, where the bride's going to be there, and you just know that you're going to need you're going to be a certain distance away. You set your flash for the distance and don't let it meter, and you do it yourself. So that's basically, this is an on-camera flash. I would suggest getting one of these. They run anywhere from $150 to $300, $500. I think they're even up to like $600. This one cost me about $400. It's a great flash, and there's battery packs for them, so you can fire consistently. I still use my regular batteries in there. But they're great. Are you ready to learn the core concepts behind taking great pictures all the time, every time, so that you can take pictures in any situation that you find yourself in? This DVD will teach you proper exposure, composition essentials, metering light, flash photography, about light, action photography, low light photography, staying in focus, white balance, and about pixels. Every chapter is broken up into subchapters so you can learn what you want to learn, when you want to learn it, and learn at your own pace. I don't just show you the settings that I use, but I show you why you choose the settings that you choose to get the best pictures around. And don't worry, it's not that difficult. This is the learning tool that I wish I had 10 years ago when I started, and that's why I'm offering it out to you guys for the price anyone can afford of $25, so photographers around the world can learn what I want to teach them. Email me at photomagic001@yahoo.com to place your order, and we'll get this disc in your hand as soon as possible. Thank you very much, and all the best to you.